Hello, would you like to join me for some movement? Franklin method practice. Water. Bottoms up. I hope you'll join. We're going to work with breathing again today. This time, instead of as a meditation, we're going to do it as a movement practice and an imagery practice. So let's start by getting a sense of where our diaphragm is, which is really lines our rib cage, but you can imagine it here sort of at the bottom of our ribs. So perhaps you can feel this rib angle here. Give it a little trace. And then trace to the back of your ribs to feel and imagine your diaphragm. So there it is. There's our first image. And then let's let our arms hang down by our sides and just notice how our body feels. Thanks for joining. You give your diaphragm a little tap. So we just had this sense of our diaphragm right underneath our ribs, right at the bottom of our ribs here. And the bottom of our ribs, they go lower in the back. We won't get into all the technicalities of that right now, but just give it a little tap. Hello, ribs. And hello, diaphragm. The diaphragm is this amazing muscle. And you could imagine it almost like a jellyfish. Right? It's got that sort of beautiful movement, the same way jellyfish kind of move underwater. And so when you breathe in, your diaphragm is going to go down. And when you breathe out, it's going to float up. So you could imagine that jellyfish swimming underwater as you breathe. Let's try that. And your diaphragm actually goes down further in the back. Maybe you could take your hands to your back body, the space between your ribs and your pelvis. And you could even round forward a little bit. And you could imagine how when you breathe in, your diaphragm sort of slides down. And since we're talking about good breathing, which is really important during times of stress, the backs of our lungs can actually hold the most oxygen because there's more pleura back there. So we could imagine our back lungs kind of unfolding here as we're in this rounded shape. And then as we exhale, the diaphragm floats up and our lungs get smaller. So let's try that a few times. Maybe you could allow your jaw to soften. And then you can let your hands go and then just come back up to stand and notice, hi, welcome, and notice how you're breathing now. When your diaphragm goes down, it actually pulls on your lungs and allows your lungs to fill with air. So perhaps you could imagine diaphragm down, lungs filling. And then as you exhale, lungs empty, pulling diaphragm up. Try that again. Diaphragm down, lungs fill. And then as you exhale, lungs empty, pulling diaphragm up. We'll try that a couple more times. Diaphragm down, lungs fill, lungs empty, diaphragm up. One more time. Diaphragm down, lungs fill, lungs empty, diaphragm up. You can also give a little massage here in the space between your ribs and your pelvis. There's all sorts of soft tissue in here. We won't get into all of that, but if you could give the tissue a little bit of pressure, you could give it a little bit of vibration. You can give it a little bit of shear, right? Rubbing back and forth. And then you can add to that a little bit of side-to-side movement. Really differentiating between your ribs and your pelvis. And maybe a little bit of rotation. Again, still just giving a little massage and movement to that soft tissue in their side body. And then you could reach up, adding arms if you like, or if it's available to you. And then just come on back to center and notice your breathing now. I'm noticing that my feet feel more grounded. Now let's do a little work with our neck, because we know air is coming in our nose and our mouth, and of course is passing down through this passage, and many of us hold a lot of tension here in our neck, especially these days. So we could start by just giving a little massage here. Perhaps you could imagine the soft tissue sliding and gliding. And I'm going to turn around to show you this. You could take one hand over the other. Let's see, can you see me? Yep. One hand over the other, and imagine that you're squeezing a sponge. So you're just going to squeeze the water out of that sponge. And then as you release, the sponge is going to fill with nice warm water. Try a couple more like that. Squeezing the water out of that sponge. And then the sponge fills with nice warm water. A couple more like this. Nice gentle squeeze. And then just take your hands down by your side. Take a breath and notice how that feels. And lastly, we're just going to finish with a little bit of buoyancy in our diaphragm. So we could imagine our diaphragm is like a trampoline, and we could bounce up and down. And that's shaking my phone, but that's okay, we'll do it. So we're going to bounce up and down and have a little sound come out, and imagine our that trampoline sort of bouncing. We'll try that a couple more times. Last one. And then just taking a moment to notice how you feel now. Thanks for joining. Take care of yourself and your communities. Drink water. Bye.